Good morning, my friend, and welcome to the second episode of the Good Girl Syndrome Show. I am so happy to see you again. If you don't know me, let me start by this. If you don't know me, my name is Julie Vander Meulen. It's my French pronunciation. In English, it would be Julie Vander Meulen. I am an empowerment coach for high achieving women, and I have developed a concept called Good Girl Syndrome. And I have developed a whole theory and a framework and so on. And I keep researching that on my own and trying to find patterns between all of us good girls because I identify as at least a recovering good girl as well. And in this show, I am unpacking some of the patterns that I've noticed by doing two things. So every Wednesday, I post a video where I answer one of the questions that you guys have asked me about one of your real life situations. So, for example, in the first episode, we saw Aisha and her fear of disappointing her boss, right? And so I gave her, it was like a mentoring coaching session on what she was actually facing in the moment. And I'm adjusting the format a little bit for the Sunday session. So I'll be posting twice a week. On the Sunday session, I'm thinking of doing some sort of a diary of a good girl, which in which I will be answering questions again, some of the questions you've asked me, but about myself. So that's something that I was not anticipating. I was expecting you ladies to send me questions about you, but many of the questions that I received were actually about me and how I face different things, how I realized that I had this pattern, how I deal with it now, how things have changed, these types of questions. So, what I'm thinking of doing today, and I think that's a structure that I will keep for a little while until I continue to receive your feedbacks and adapt based on what's most useful for you, is I'm thinking that then I will be taking a topic. Right. Every week I will be taking a topic. So this week it was the fear of disappointing others. We started on Wednesday with Aisha's, coaching or mentoring session, where we talked about her specific situation. And then on Sunday, so this session that you're seeing now, the Sunday version of a week will be on the same bigger topic. So the fear of disappointing others, but how I deal with it in my own life. And then what I'm going to be doing is I will connect all of this because I also received some other amazing feedback through the Google form. Thank you, by the way, to everyone who has done that. If you want to do it now, you can go in the description box and go see all the different links that I have put there. And one of them is a link to a Google form where you can ask me any question that you have. Um, and so one of the feedbacks that I received from actually one of my clients, hi Maris, thank you so much for the feedback, was how sometimes in my Sunday Sanctuary newsletter, where I have hundreds and hundreds of women who read it and interact with me every single week, that sometimes the topic that I talk about are specifically tailored for new good girls who are only realizing that they're good girls. But perhaps sometimes it would be useful if I had more in-depth content for women who are already, on this track and want to heal even more. And so I'm thinking that then having this type of structure where I base my Sunday sanctuary content based on your own questions will also help me tailor a little bit more to all of your needs wherever you are on your journey, on your good girl journey. So today, I'm then going to be doing my own little diary, of a good girl. And I'm going to be talking about my own fear of disappointing others and how this has shown up in my life. Before I do, though, you know how this works here on YouTube, Spotify, and everything. Um, if you are here, if you know me, if you don't know me, please reach out in the comments. I love reading you. Encourage me if you have something nice to say, if you want me to continue these things please encourage me in the comments. It will mean the world to me as I'm starting this. And also, just if you know me, just say hi. Just a simple hi would be enough. If you like this, you can put a like, you can comment, you can subscribe. If you're not yet subscribed, and you can share it. If it's useful for you and you think it could be useful for someone else, please do share it so that I can. This is how I, keep increasing my mission. It's how my Sunday Sanctuary newsletter grew from all of you just spreading the word. And so I'm hoping that we can do the same thing here and that we can actually impact the women who need it most, which is my biggest thing, why I'm doing all of this. So for this idea of the fear of disappointing others, I just thought about it, right? I do quite a few podcasts and interviews. And so I was just thinking, I will interview myself. I will do it in a scenario where I just interview myself and ask myself the questions that I would have wanted to know, right? If I wanted if I wanted feedback from me, and if I was in an interview, what type of questions would someone ask me around my own fear of disappointing others? So this is what today's going to be about. So the first type of category of questions that I thought about is the reality of my life right now when it comes to this topic. So as a recovering good girl, when does the fear of disappointing others show up for me? Um, and let me first say that the fear of disappointing others used to be a very, very crippling fear for me. My whole life, a few years ago, was based on constantly scanning my world to understand, like I was using all my brain power to understand what others needed, or at least what I thought they needed, what they wanted, what they expected, right, from me and from the world. And then my whole way of being, I was constantly trying to make sure that people got what they needed, what I thought they needed from me, but also what they weren't receiving from other people. I was trying to compensate for that, so that I was trying to make sure that the people in front of me were feeling as good as they could, which meant in a process that then I spent most of my life not being at all in alignment with my own self, not asking myself what I want, what I need, like completely overlooking all of these things because I was constantly looking outward. So in the past few years, though, this has changed quite a bit because I do a lot of work on myself and because I do this beautiful work with all of you. So I constantly revise my own patterns, right? I'm very growth driven as well. You can see it now, right? And this little YouTube channel that like I receive feedback, I integrate it immediately. And so I'm constantly looking for ways to be a better version of myself or a more aligned version of myself, a version of myself that I actually like, these types of things, that I feel better, that my body feels better. So I'm constantly looking for these different things. And so nowadays, um, most of my life, let's say about 90% of my time is spent me looking inward to understand what I need to do. So I would say the scale has tipped quite a bit because I would say that before that I was 100% focused on the external world. And then now I would say 90% I'm focused first on what happens with me. So which doesn't mean that I don't care about what other people are facing or how they feel and stuff like that. But I just try to like that there's now like a sort of a door, if I can put it like that. There's now a door between what I see in other people, because the scanning little mind that I have is still there. So I can still, I can still see the emotions of people. I can see if they blink. I can see all these different things, which is very, very useful when I do coaching, right? If you've been coached by me, you know that I will often express out loud, you're smiling, or it seems like you feel, right? I really scan. I see your beautiful faces and I see what I think it could mean. And I try to see, it helps me understand how I can best help you. And if the feedback that I'm giving is what's most aligned with what you need right now, right? So it's a beautiful skill that I kept. And if you have a similar pattern, I would suggest that you see it this way as well, that it's not just bad, right? Where it could be something destructive is if you base your whole life, like I was doing, on what other people want, then you lose track of who you are, or you perhaps, like me, never realized who you really were. You never took the time or didn't feel like you deserved, the space, the inner space to just see who you actually are. What are your needs? What are your wants? What are your desires? What don't you like? What don't you want? What are your boundaries? All these different things. But on the other side of that is good news, if I can say it like that, the good news is if you've been focused very much on the external world your whole life, you also have some superpowers that are still there and that you can still use, which are like me, for example, but you don't have to be a coach to do that. I was doing that when I was a teacher as well. I've done that in many different situations, just as a person, as a friend, as a partner, as a family member. It's like you most probably are quite empathetic and you can quite accurately, not always right, but most of the time you can really understand, what people are going through and how they're really feeling, and the disconnect. You can see the disconnect between, what people are saying, how they're actually the body expressions, what are they saying, what is the voice tone that they're using, like all those different little, cues that make you, yeah, just a really good empath, right? Which I still have now and I still use now. But now I would say that about 10% of my time is still, I still have these moments when I'm thinking that, I'm still looking to the outside world, especially if I'm feeling stressed. So I notice in my own inner world, and check if this is true for you as well, that a lot of times what happens to me is I will, if I'm feeling amazing, which most of the time, if you've seen me in the past few months or the past few years, I tend to be, in a good mood. I tend to be in a good mood. I do that myself. Like I put myself in this type of mood, try to look for, the bright on the bright side and these different things. I wasn't like that. If you've met me, I saw Nina in the comments from the last video that you were at school with me. I don't know what your memories are of me, but I was a particularly dark teenager. And so my inner world was not like that. I created that, right? Over time, like I learned to become this type of person, and I really love how I feel inside myself by being this person. And I also love how I interact with people and how I view life and how I view the world, right? It's why I've like curated this version of myself and this version of my inner world so much so that I could feel good inside myself no matter what happened on the outside. But then there's still 10% of the time, I'd say, where I don't feel good. Sometimes it's more than 10%, right? Depending on the phase and what's actually happening. Sometimes you have hardships in the world and, you can have the best attitude possible. You're still sad or you're still angry. You're still, right? It's part of life. But then, so in that 10%, let's say, the things that come up the most for me are my own fear of not being good enough, right? And my own fear of being inadequate. And the biggest thing for me in general tends to be around my relationships with my friends, sometimes with my family as well, um, because it's about time. It's because I'm trying to build something. There's a lot of contradictions in my life, if I can say it like that, that I I'm what I call a sociable hermit. So I'm extremely friendly if you meet me. I can be in a room and I'll be super smiley, super happy to see you. Like, it'll feel like we're instant friends in the moment. And then at the same time, I'm very much a hermit. So in my daily life, all I want to do is to be by myself, creating my content, reflecting about things, and from time to time talk to my friends. But I can't like inside of me there's like this blockage, if I can say, like I don't want to be spending time with other people in general except for my partner. And so because I have a partner, right, like he takes a lot of the space, and I love giving that to him, but then there's not too much space for other people. And so that creates in me guilt, right, which is probably one of your own little favorite flavors of suffering, some version of that. I can feel very guilty that I don't, like there's an inner conflict inside of me between the woman who's not looking on the outside and who's looking on the inside to what makes me feel good and aligned and so on. And in that, when I focus on that, what I see is I need a lot of time. I need a lot of time, a lot of peace and quiet so that I can create all of those different things that I do. Um, and feel rested and feel good about myself. My ideal relationships with my friends are people that I see from time to time. And from time to time, we reply to, like, we send each other audios on WhatsApp, and that's about it. I have like, a lot of difficulties maintaining the relationships. Like, I can keep relationships for a lot of years. I don't have a problem with that. I'm a pretty loyal person. But I have much difficulty with when I need to like follow through with like responding to messages. If you're my client, you probably have seen that as well. Or like if you send me messages, right? It's how I started this whole good girl syndrome show. Actually, it's because of my sensation of being inadequate at responding to messages. And so to me, the fear of disappointing others comes from, it shows up nowadays. It shows up mainly in this area of my life. Um, and mainly my sensation, beyond the fact that I'm afraid of disappointing others, I'm afraid of hurting others. Because my sensation is that I think in most people's minds, the shortcut is if I care about you, then I will respond and I will prioritize you, which I completely understand. And at the same time, in my inner world, it's not related to that. So just because I don't reply to you doesn't mean I don't love you. Just because I don't reply to you doesn't, it just means one, I could be overwhelmed if it's something negative, right? or I don't have the words. The sensation that I often have inside me is I don't have the words. Like I spend my day coaching, right? I spend my day writing content. I spend my day engaging, with many comments and emails and things like that. I just don't have words anymore, like to give to, to other people. And so, yeah, that's the one thing that I have right now that I'm still working through. Um, I'm very, very lucky. So how I cope with that in real life is I had to do a big, a painful, I will say it like that, because it was not easy for me because I feel that I'm a loyal person. And a lot of my relationships I've had for many, many years. But I've had to scan through, very painfully scan through all of the relationships that I had because I'm so friendly. I had like 60 friends, when it's 60, 70 friends to reply. Like I can't do that. Even with 5 friends, I can't reply. So can you imagine with 60 friends? So at some point I needed to slowly see like who, like in the little time that I have where I actually want to connect with my friends, who would show up, who would I want to make time for, who felt like they were, like I was giving them energy, but they were also giving me the same type of energy. And it has nothing to do with whether the person is selfish or not. I'm not talking about how people were performing, right? I'm talking about how I was receiving it. Who am I feeling most regenerated by? Who do I feel most giggly when I see them, And I had to make a scan from that and like make it clear in my mind that it's like, I'm not saying there's something wrong with this person, right? Not just for them, but also for me, for my own sense of guilt, because I want to be good. No, I want to be this good girl who's friendly with everyone, who does everything perfectly, who doesn't hurt anyone. Like it's a lot of pressure in my head. And so for me to be able to do that, then I just went through a phase where I was just like not responding. And I was also noticing how people were responding to that. It's been a process that lasted for many, many years and it's still ongoing. Um, and from that, of seeing like how people respond, who like pressures me, right, to have more and more contacts, who finds the right balance of like sometimes being playful, like sometimes who has a way of being that doesn't overwhelm me. And also who, the most important thing of all to me is and was, but it still is like who understands it and who is okay with it, like profoundly okay with it. That like if I don't respond for 3 weeks, they don't make it mean anything about themselves or about me. Who loves me anyway and like figures this thing out. And ideally, who has a similar need to me. Like I can write to them and they're super happy when they see my message and then they keep going with their lives, right? Um, so that's how I've coped with it mostly is by really pruning who is in my life. And I'm not going to say it was easy, and I'm not going to say that it is still easy because I still receive some messages all the time. Perhaps some of my former friends or people that I absolutely love are watching this now, and they're part of the people that I'm talking about now. None of this is easy for me. It's just that I'm learning to find ways to respect, respect what's going on for me, respect my own rhythm, and also is also I think a shift in beliefs that like I allow myself to believe that I deserve this space. That like my way, my favorite way of receiving love is receiving space, right? So some people really love attention. A lot of people love attention. I really need space to like be myself, to find myself, like all these different things. And so I think that that has required me to do a lot of work on myself to first understand that I need space and that's not something to fix because I spent a lot of years trying to fix that part. I was thinking that, I need to have these friends. Like I need to adapt to this world that says that I need to constantly be in contact with people and I was exhausted. And it felt like an obligation. And so I was like, so I'm removing some good girl patterns in some ways, right? And then at the same time I'm adding new versions, no, new versions of like good girl patterns by like forcing myself to do things because I think it's the right thing to do. So going back, if you've ever seen any of my content, the easiest way I find to explain what good girl syndrome is when you have a tendency to do what you think you should do instead of doing what you really want to do. And so I was completely that. I used to be completely that, someone who always did what she thought she should do, and I was feeling miserable inside. Um, and many of the girls that who follow me, and the women who follow me, have some version of that pattern as well. So one was then accepting that about myself and thinking there's nothing to fix there. And then it was releasing the people who thought there was something to fix. Right. So if someone thought that there was something to fix, instead of me being apologetic and saying, I'm sorry, I'll do better, da, 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 explaining a 5 page, novel of like why I'm reacting this way and it's not their fault, I realized actually I need to release these people. Not because they're mean, not because I'm mean, but just because there's a sort of incompatibility for the moment. I don't know in the future, but for the moment, there's some form of incompatibility and it's hurting me. It's probably hurting them as well, but it's also hurting me. And so I have also a right to just let go of specific relationships in this way. Um, and then, yeah, from then on, kept, pruning these different relationships. And I think that this whole process has taught me a lot of things about myself. What I said about being a hermit and feeling okay about that. And realizing that actually a lot of the artists or like, some of the brilliant minds that I admire, they have some similar pattern to mine. They don't call it good girl syndrome. Perhaps they don't feel bad about it, but a lot of people feel this way when they're very creative. They need their own bubble. They go in the middle of the woods, right, somewhere. I always joke around with my friends that I probably should have been born in the Middle Ages because then there would be no phones, right? And so, people could pass by every once in a while. If they were in my corner of the woods, they would say hi. I'd be so happy to see them. I'd make them dinner, and then they would be gone and they would continue their lives, right? And I would be able to continue my own in a little piece. But yeah, that's not the times that we live in. Um, so yeah, that's kind of how it shows up in my life. Let me see what other questions. What did those patterns cost you? Is one of the questions I came up with. Um, yeah, I think what are the patterns of being this type of, fear of disappointing others, being a people pleaser, putting others' needs first, and these types of things. It's cost me a lot of things. I would say at my worst moment, I was chronically depressed and I was chronically anxious. So just this to say that, like, I think sometimes we underestimate, like, a lot of us, when we see what we feel is not going well in our lives, we sometimes don't make the connection between how we're behaving in the moment and the ailments that we have. So a lot of I'm not a doctor, right? So go see a doctor if you have any ailment of any form. But my suspicion will be that for most of those things that you suffer from, so I don't know if it's like, I have migraines. I used to have migraines half the month. Now I'm down to like one or two per month, right? It also shows me how I'm evolving, but it also shows me that, like, okay, so there's still a little bit of work to do. I'll figure it out in my own time, but it's like it's my body keeps giving me signals that I was ignoring earlier. I kept thinking that my body was my enemy. I was like, you know, I have stuff to do. When I was a researcher, I was like, I don't have time to be like half the month with migraines. Like, how do I even explain this? I need to teach a class, like, how do I even explain this to the world? And then I actually realized, oh, actually my body is my friend and it's trying to communicate with me and I'm just ignoring it completely. So the issue is not my body, but my body has like specific reactions because I'm making it function in ways that are not adapted, right? Because my mind is controlling the show and my mind is also like overstimulated and is creating all sorts of things that are not healthy for me either, right? So the issue was here, right? And so then it perpetuated in my body as well. So I would also suggest, if you're not already doing that, I know a lot of you, the ones that I have talked to, a lot of you are in some form of journey of being kinder to yourself. And part of it for you, just like for me, is like reconnecting with your own body and like listening to different signals, right? And so I going back to like what the cost was for me, I think one of the biggest costs that I didn't realize at the time was how bad I was feeling in my own body and in my own mind. That like I was actually like a lot of those things you could say it's like from trauma, and I would agree, but part of it is not just the trauma. It's like me having a specific way of thinking and not realizing that this is something that I can change, and two, not realizing that this was impacting other areas of my life. right? I had disconnected everything, when actually nowadays how I see everything about myself and about every woman that I see and that I coach, um, is everything about ourselves is connected, just on some level, right? And so if you're feeling a lot of pain, right, in your back, in your shoulders, and different, what is that saying, right? You can go, I'm not saying like you have to do this whole investigation by yourself. You can do part of it, right? Try to understand, when am I feeling this pain, right? Like, notice your body. What is it trying to say, right? Do you need to rest? Because for me, many times the thing that I actually need is really just to rest. But because my mind has a plan for the year, for the quarter, for the month, for the, like, my mind loves plans, and I love being an overachiever, And so my body does not align with my plan. My body sometimes wakes up tired when I have created a whole list for me to do, like 14 hours of work, right? Um, and sometimes I think that it's, I'm supposed to be resting, and actually my mind is like, I'm like a little, I don't know if you have that too. Like, sometimes I'm like a little genius, little Einstein in my head, and I want to do 1,000 things, but I had planned in my calendar that this was the time for me to rest. So now I'm kind of going back to that, and just to the extent that it's possible, I understand that probably most of you are employees, and so most of you have to, you have a schedule that you haven't chosen and that you cannot choose on a day-to-day basis, which is not my case anymore, right? It was part of my whole journey of becoming an entrepreneur. I'll say in French because I can't pronounce it in English properly. Is like becoming a small business owner and having my own coaching practice and so on. Part of it was for me to have a lot of freedom. And part of that freedom came from the fact that I used to have those migraines, right? There's other things as well, but part of it was I was trying to find a way to have my own rhythm and not have to like go with a preset rhythm that I can't, like, if I want to heal and I want to change, I realized I needed to take a step back from that and kind of reconnect with my own rhythm. And so I understand that probably most of you cannot do that. But what I would say is that the first step that you could do from that is still actually listen to your body and what it's saying. Because at least on the weekends, at least in the night, at least in the morning routine, but even throughout the day, right? Perhaps you can take a break at different moments, right? And just actually listen to yourself. And even if you're at work, I think there's something to be said about the tempo as well. My expectations of myself, and I would imagine your expectation of yourself sometimes, were so high and also linear. So I was always thinking that my input should always be at the same level, and my expectation for my level was up there, which was creating so much pressure to perform for me. And nowadays, I realize that even when I have a tight schedule, so for example, sometimes some of you know that I am what they call a senior leader. So I participate in the Tony Robbins world. So I go to these events and I stay for sometimes 4 or 5. Now, next week, I will be doing an event for 8 days for Tony Robbins. And so I have my own Zoom room with other co leaders, right? And we have from around, I would say, 50 people to 350 people in a Zoom room. And so we are constantly, I would be like that on my screen for about 14 hours a day for 8 days. And then after the 14-hour day, I also need to like revise some things for the next day, things that I will need to present, things that I need to work on, right? All these different things. So it's extremely intense. And so when I'm doing that, I'm not, respecting my flow. I'm waking up at 5 a.m. in the morning to be able to start at 6 a.m. Like it's not at all an ideal scenario for me. But I love what I'm doing. And while I'm doing it, I'm learning. I wasn't good at that a year ago when I first started this journey, but I'm learning to ask myself throughout the thing, like, what do I need now? Like, how am I actually feeling? Can I do something about it, right? Can I turn off my screen in this specific situation? Do I need to drink more water? Do I need to ask for help? Do I need to say, hey, I need a 30-minute walk? Or like, do I need, what do I need to do? Do I need to stand up? Do I need to, but this connection with my body is making me realize that I can do hard things and I can do things that I wouldn't have chosen. Like the way that it's done is not specifically what I would have chosen, but I can do it in a way that respects me, right? And I think that this is what, like, when if we talk about people pleasing and the fear of disappointing others and so on, I think that the main thing behind it, like besides your fear of others, is like coming back to yourself and what you actually need. And I think that the most basic level of that is to have some respect for ourselves. I'm including myself in it because it's the process that I'm in, but having some respect for what my body has to say, having some respect for my mind and what it has to say, having some respect for my heart and how it feels in the moment, right? Like having some respect for my own dreams, right? And then from that point on, doesn't mean that I'm disrespectful to other people. It just means that then, it is my job to respect me, right? It is my job to like listen to me, to what my needs are and so on. Other people can figure that out for me, right? Even if they try, however good they are, and it's not their job. It's my job to figure out what's going on with me. And then from that place, I can make better decisions. And this is it goes back to what I was saying with the door, right? That I have now, I feel like I have now in my mind, is that my door every morning, I don't know how you put that in your own routine, but in my own routine every morning, I have about an hour at least where the door is shut. I will not be looking at emails. I will not be looking at messages. I will not be looking at like anything, right? The door is locked and it's just for me. And I go on my walk. I have a little dog. His name is Leo, a Chihuahua. And so every single morning I go for a long walk with him. And this is like my most beautiful moment. It's like I just walk, I talk to my dog. I'm, a little bit of a dreamer. So I dream of all the things. I like watch, the sun. I look at the birds. I look at whatever is in front of me, right? I'm connected to nature. I will ask myself some questions. I have a ritual that I do while I'm on my walk. I listen to specific things that put me in a good mood and remind me who I want to be. I ask myself questions of like, what are 10 things that I find absolutely amazing about today or about my life today, right? And I try to find them, even if I'm not in the right mood. And then I try to find 10 things that I would absolutely adore right now. Like, what would I love, right? I would love to have a fantastic day today. I would love to have, I don't know, a date today or this week with my boyfriend. I would love to, whatever it is, to talk to my sister. I would love to. And so I just express these things without any need for me to act on them, but just I put myself in this type of mood. And by the time that I come back home, it's like I've had a whole hour of like me with me, right? Feeling fully connected with myself, having really listened to what is coming up for me. Right? And every single day is very different. Sometimes my mood was very chill. All I wanted, everything in my list of what I wanted and what I was grateful for was still things. I was so happy I could wake up late. I was so happy that, I could go on this walk. I was so happy I could walk super slow. I was so happy about all these different things, right? Nothing was productive about today, was not that type of day. Other days I'm like on fire and all I want is to perform 5,000 things, and that's completely fine. But then I can listen to my own rhythm and to my own needs, and I can plan my day accordingly. And we were talking about rhythm and tempo. Is like even if you are an employee or if you have a lot of things scheduled and you can't change them or you don't want to change them for now, you can at least adjust your tempo to that and your intention to what you truly want. And I think that's the first step. And I think to me, that's what I just said with a little metaphor of the door is that like have this door in your mind between you and others and have that space. Like whatever I told you that my biggest need is space, create like you deserve to have your own little space. It might not be as big as mine, right? Probably you don't need all this space from other people like I do. But if you do, that's completely fine. Welcome to the club. And if not, like create your own little space. You deserve to have at least a little bit of a bubble that you can have just for yourself that feels just so good for you. So I think I'm going to end on this note. I hope this was helpful for you, this type of framework. Feel free to ask me other questions. And then I will, like I said, I will try to calibrate my whole week content from this show to the newsletter based on a specific topic. And from week to week, I will evolve. So, for example, if you watch a video on Wednesday and it's on a specific topic and you have questions you want to ask for the Sunday, right, when I do this little diary type of thing, feel free to ask me anything you want. I'll collect all of your questions and I'll be sure to answer at some point or other. But yeah, that's what I do. It's simple. often the times that I do are very simple. They are simple just because I do them day after day after day after day. And after years of training a specific skill, it becomes like second nature, right? Now, for me, having that space is very, very easy. And it's like a non-negotiable everywhere I go. Because that space I can have in the bathroom, right? If I'm on a holiday and I need to be with someone and like I need to do things in a specific way, that time in the bathroom where I'm taking my shower for 10 minutes and then I'm doing my makeup or whatever it is, and my skincare routine, whatever it is that you're doing, this time is for me. Like this door, literally, there's a door, is closed, right? And the door of my mind is closed in that time as well. So find your own version of that and tell me if it works for you, if it helps you um, feel better inside yourself, connect yourself better to your needs and your wants and whatever is going on for you. Um, and also, like, see if it helps as like a first step. It's not all the steps, but as a first step to stop caring about what other people think and, trying to not disappoint them. I think that, creating that little space is the first right step. Um, yeah, on that journey to being your own person and not getting, so much sucked into the external world and what it wants from you. So I think that's it, my friend. I will stop here for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that, or this audio if you're listening to me. I hope that this was helpful. If it was, please put it in the comments. If you need something else from me, put it either in the comments or in the Google form. And of course, if you liked it, please put a little like so that I can see it. And I will see you next Wednesday. Sending you lots of love and good vibes. And I can't wait to see you again. Bye bye.